Hey everyone, Josiah here, and we're going to do another walkthrough of the final chapter of my book. And this chapter is all about becoming a business leader in your niche. So let's jump in. Also, before we get started, the today's episode. So last week we celebrated 1 year anniversary of the Content Heroes podcast, and today's episode is the recording of the live episode we did in the Facebook group for that celebration of the 1 year anniversary on Thursday. And so I had my friend Naduk interview me, kind of turn the tables, turn the mic back around to me to really talk about and dig into my journey over the past year of going from content hero to business hero, and starting a podcast and growing it and building a community and creating content that fuels business growth. And so I highly recommend you go check out that episode if you haven't already. And so it's at contentheroes.com/55. That's the episode number. And let's jump into chapter 5 of the book. So if you did listen to today's episode, you probably already know that a big turning point for me, where I really started to shift how I was thinking about creating content and building a business and the podcast in general, was earlier this spring when I realized I shared my podcast production process in a couple of the groups that I'm in, and just had this overwhelming response to it. And I realized that I had created something valuable with the podcast and the audience that I was growing, and that my expertise in the niche was really needed. And so I know that I've talked to so many content creators, and usually how you start out is you're creating content because it's something that you're passionate about, and then you end up over time kind of turning that passion into a business as you realize that that you can actually help people, and there's a market for your voice and for your expertise, and so this spring, that was the turning point for me. And so this chapter is all about what that looks like, what it means to, we call, when I talk about closing that 1% gap, to shift between the content creator, from the content creator to the business leader. And there are a few key points that I really want to touch on today inside of this last chapter of the book. And the first big one is that becoming the business leader means owning the vision for your business, and then building and leveraging a team that you rally around this vision. So that is the primary responsibility for the leader of the business, for you, is owning that vision and making sure that you're clearly communicating that clear and compelling vision for who you're serving, well, the purpose of the business, and why you're serving who you're serving, right, in your audience or your customer. So the first person I had on the podcast all the way back in episode 8 that really just hit this point home for me was, and I resonated with his story so much, was Josh Summers. So he founded Go West Ventures and is a creator of travelchinacheaper.com. And for him, it's just like my journey and so many journeys. It started off as a hobby or something he was passionate about. For him, it was a hobby blog, which became a portfolio of websites that combined bring in over 500,000 visitors every month. And so what Josh said was, for him, it took about 5 years, but for him, the thing that shifted was going from thinking of himself as a content creator, which is very self-focused, right? It's a lot. There's a lot of ego, and there are pros and cons to that, right? But there's a lot of ego and attachment to the content itself when you're thinking of yourself as the content creator. And instead, what he did was he shifted his thinking to, instead of being the content creator, I'm the CEO of a media company, right? And so a CEO of a media company is going to do things and think about things very differently than just a content creator. And so, one of those big mindset shifts is building out a team. That was a big thing for him, where he started to really push through the ceiling and really start to scale his business when he sat down and said, "Okay, how can I bring in other people who and utilize their strengths in places where I don't have those strengths, or where it's not worth my time as the CEO to put into that, because I have to say no to the things that I really should be doing." And how can I build that team up around myself and my unique strengths to really start to scale and leverage that team to scale the business? And so that was really, I really resonated with this, because there's definitely been a direct correlation in my own businesses between, the growth inside of my own businesses, and the team that I surround myself with. So a few questions here. What mindset shifts need to take place in order for you to fully step into the role of business leader? I'd love for you to jump in the comments here, and let me know, is this something that you've struggled with? Do you find it easy to step into that role, or do you still have an attachment? Are you focused on leadership, or are you focused on content creation? Have you struggled with building a team, or is letting go of that doing the work itself, is that easy for you? And then how can you adopt a strategic view to guide and shape the direction of your business? So the next piece is, and part of owning that vision is really, it's making the shift to realize that your content it should be fueling your business. Like, your content is not your business. Your content is fueling your business. And what that means is, John Jantz talks about this a lot. If you've followed him at all, you're familiar with duct tape marketing, and I had him on the podcast. He talks about the 7 stages of the customer journey being know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. And when you think about it, as the business leader, like, that's the framework that you should be thinking about, how you're taking people on a journey, and how people are coming into your ecosystem, the business that you're building, and making their way through to sign on the dotted line, to make an investment, right? That's where the business starts to grow. That's where the content goes. It goes from the content being your business, right, to actually fueling your business, where the content serves a purpose and it's aligned with the greater purpose of who you're serving and what you're trying to achieve and the outcomes you're trying to create. And that's where the business growth comes in. Let's see, Jen says customer journey is everything. Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with that. And that's really what started to shift for me too in my own business with Content Heroes, realizing that, I'd spent the first 6 months really flexing that muscle, building that muscle of consistency and output, and it built up this body of work. And then when I sat down this summer to look at it and go back through and kind of evaluate everything, I realized how much value was there, and that what I was doing was I was sort of unintentionally taking people on a journey. I didn't realize it. And so then when I got really strategic about it, that's when stuff really started to take shape and to start to fuel things. So this right here is key. When you shift your focus from content creator to business leader, you quickly come to understand the importance of content becoming the fuel that drives business growth and connecting it back to your customer's journey. So do you start with strategy? Are you creating content that is connected to your customer's journey? Where are those gaps, right? How can you leverage content to move them forward, in turn fueling your own business growth? So that's a key differentiator between someone who has just the content creator mindset which ends up a lot of times being creating content for content's sake, versus someone who has really stepped into the business leader role and is being very strategic about the content that they create and tying that back to the customer journey. And then I think it's episode 45 here with Nathan Elson. You've heard me talk about him. He's a personal friend of mine and a mentor of mine. And I love the way that he frames this, like what really is at the core of this mindset shift, which is going from being responsible for output, right? So the thing that gets created, and shifting to being responsible for the outcomes. Because when you're responsible for the outcomes, then it comes back to, okay, how can, like Josh Summers was talking about, how can I get people in place, and give them what they need in order to help them realize the outcome. And that's what he says here. I love this quote. The best way for me to fulfill that purpose is to enable and help others to do the work to get there. And that is the crucial difference, because it's not just about authority or responsibility. It's about caring enough about the outcome and enough about the people to help the people realize the outcome. Right. And Nathan is one of the leaders in my life that I respect the most. And I love his outlook on all of that. So as you're shifting to this role, ask yourself, what purpose does this content that my team is creating serve? And are the leadership decisions I'm making today moving me closer or further away from realizing my bigger vision? So the last thing here is, in stepping into this role of being the business leader, it's also about owning the part of owning the vision and the outcome is getting clarity around who your niche is, and really dialing that in and focusing down on it, and making sure that you're communicating that to your team as well, because when you really start to focus in on your niche and solving their specific problems, then that's when you become what Matt Johnson talks about here, like micro famous within a small group of people, which is much more powerful than being not having much influence at all to a larger group of people, right? A lot of people. And Matt, I am very much aligned with him on this. And he credits podcasting as a great strategy. And as you know, that's been my primary mode of doing this, of building up, becoming a leader in a very specific niche and growing my influence in that niche by focusing and serving a very specific type of person who has very specific needs, and delivering value to them, showing up consistently and doing that through podcasting. So there's some more questions here. Definitely recommend you go in, and this live is getting a little bit long, so we'll cut it a little short. But my final thoughts here that I would just encourage you, as you read through the book, sit with some of these questions, and really contemplate them. And that's where you'll start to see these shifts in how you're approaching your content, how you're approaching your business, and how you're connecting all of that together. So I want to emphasize here that now is the time for you to show up and be the visionary. What are you waiting for? Like it's not tomorrow. It's not 90 days from now. Like it's right now in this moment. And so some of these questions that to contemplate are, what becomes possible for you when you let go of fear and stop thinking like an imposter? What becomes possible when you realize you realize action imperfectly gets you closer to your goal? What transforms in your life when you simply start showing up? Are you ready to discover the transformation that is possible when you realize you can be authentic in your content? So, expansion comes from action. The choice is yours. Your audience is waiting. Will you show up for them? Thank you so much. This has been really fun walking through this book together the last few days. I'd love to know your thoughts. Love to hear what you think. So drop a comment in the comments here, and if you haven't already, pick up your own copy of the book at businessherobook.com. And until next time, go be a hero, everyone.